right, folks, we got we have something that I've never done before, an interview with Mr. Charles Hardy.
Correct.
Correct.
Call me Chuck.
All right. All right. Chuck, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, what's there to tell you other than I've been around here for 11 years at the museum. I came here as a result of recuperating from a stroke, learning to walk and talk again. And so I was walking around on a stick for a while. And then as my health improved, I laid the stick down and just started walking and talking with people, telling them all about the trains, all about the museum, my years with Norfolk Southern as a rail highway clerk, and just enjoying trains and being around the 611 since I was 7 years old. I'm a rail fan. That's simple and to the point. I didn't expect to work for Norfolk Southern, but when that happened, that was the basically icing on the cake. Yeah.
All right. So when was the first time you saw one of the Jays, and what was it like?
Oh, when I saw the first Jay, I was 7 years old, working. I'd gone to the train station with my dad because he worked at the passenger station, and it was his day off. He was bringing my sister, me, and my brother down to the station to see a Jay. Didn't know which one it was going to be. Didn't really matter. It was going to be the fastest coal-fired engine in the world. Then we were going to see it, and we saw the Jay come in, and the other part of it was my uncle was the head chef on the dining car, and we were there to see him. And so the train pulled in with a J on the front and stopped, and we're standing there looking at it, and then the fireman blows it down, so the steam and stuff got on us, and my dad said, "It's nothing but steam, it ain't gonna hurt you." And we were jumping and going on, and then so we started walking back to where my uncle was in the dining car. He opened the vestibule door, and he had on his big chef's hat, and his apron was tied around him. He was talking to my dad and us. He said, "Were we hungry?" We said, "Yeah." So he went back into the dining car and came out. He had fixed this sub sandwich and cut it in 3 sections for me and my brother and sister. And so we standing there trying to eat the sub sandwich, or eat the sandwich, and my eye caught the conductor as he was stepping down off the train. And his pants had the crease in them, his shoes were shined, the gold buttons was down the front of his coat. He was sharp as a tack. I almost dropped my sandwich watching this man climb down off the train. Yeah. And then he didn't walk any kind of way. He had a particular kind of walk that showed that he knew what he was doing, and he was proud of what he was doing. He was the conductor on the Powhatan Arrow, the elite sleep train on the N&W. Yeah. And he, it made you look at him and say, "Yeah, I want to be like that." Yeah. And so we watched him, and he spoke, and he went down and he talked to the engineer, and he went in his pocket, came out, and he didn't have his watch on his arm. He had a Hamilton, a gold Hamilton with the chain on it. And he's standing there with it in his hand, and he's looking at it and talking up to the conductor engineer and looking down and talking up to him. And then finally he says, "Okay, it's that time." He closes it, puts it back in his watch pocket, and turns and starts walking down the train. And gets down to the car that he's going to climb up in. He looks down the train that way, looks that way at his assistant at the end, and then he steps up into the car and closes the vestibule, and he's leaning out, and when he leans out, he does this to the engineer, and the train takes off. Man, I was 7 years old. I said it in the other video. I was hooked, hog-tied and collared. And you couldn't have done, yeah, if you'd have pulled me on a stack of pancakes, I'd have oozed inside them pancakes because that's the way I felt like. Hot butter on pancakes. Yep, or butter on hot pancakes. Just melted all the way through. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, the passion was always there because I watched trains as a kid. We lived in Hurt Park up on Salem Avenue. Could go out my back door right through the park and stand there and look at trains up in Schaefer's yard. They was humping the trains and putting trains together the whole day. When I wasn't in school, I was up there looking at trains. And even the crews and stuff, they would see me standing up on the hill, and they would blow the horn and blink the lights and all that good stuff. They knew I was up there watching. Yeah.
So what did you do before you started working with VNT?
I worked, let's see. I worked in public schools in D.C. for 10 years. Dispatched Yellow Cab and Diamond Cab for 3 years. And then I got the phone call, because I wasn't doing anything, from a cousin. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm not doing anything." He said, "Well, come on out to Van Dorn Street." So I caught the Blue Line subway train, rode out to Van Dorn Street, and walked in the office. I said, "What do you want?" He said, "Sit down." And he had his computer screen up, and there was this white trailer on the screen. It had the word Triple Crown up in the corner. And he said, "This is a new thing coming up on Norfolk Southern. We're doing this." I said, "So you putting the trailer on the flat car?" He said, "No, cuz." He said, "It don't go on a flat car." I said, "How you gonna run a trailer without a flat car? That's piggyback." He said, "No, you don't do it that way." He said, "Look out the door." So I opened the door and looked out on the track, and there were some of these white trailers sitting there. And he said, "Look at them." I said, "I see them sitting there." He said, "Don't you see something strange?" I said, "Yeah, there's no flat car. When y'all gonna lift it?" He said, "We don't lift them up on a flat car." I said, "How'd you gonna get it down the track?" He said, "Look at it." And between the rubber wheels was a set of rail wheels. And they were coupled together. Not a knuckle couple. They were sticking up in the back of under the back of the trailer. They were hooked together. And I said, "So now you're telling me this is going down the track?" I said, "How do you couple the engine to it?" He said, "There's a trailer that has a knob on the front, and it has a coupler on it. That couples to the engine, and the rest of these lock in place under the bottom of the trailer. They lock in place." And I said, "Okay." I said, "This is how you're going to take this down the track?" He said, "Yeah." And he showed, when he had it on the screen, you could actually see it going down the track, and it looked like a snake as it was going down and maneuvering down the track. And at that time, then his boss come walking out the office and said, "You Chuck?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I hear you know a little bit about trains." "A lot about trains." I said, "No, I know a little bit about trains." He said, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "Nothing." He said, "We'll be here tomorrow at 2 o'clock. I got hired instantaneously to Norfolk Southern Intermodal Division, and I stayed there 8 years at Van Dorn Street. I did it all. We put trains together, we took them apart, we answered the telephone, we did customer service, and we even got a chance to operate the diesels, which a clerk don't normally get a chance to do. A clerk don't do. I guess it was because of my personality. I was, the guys liked me, and so I did stuff that nobody else could do. I could actually get up on the engine. They showed me how to crank the engines up. I cranked them up. They even let me take them down the track. I coupled to the train, pulled the train up, and then got off of it. Then I even had a chance to ride my train from Van Dorn to Roanoke. Actually rode in the engine on the head end and came home on the train, on my train that I built. Yeah. You don't get to do that. Hey, talking about bucket list? Hey, that's something on some people's bucket list they wish they could do. And I got a chance to do that. Yeah.
Wow. So what is the next step for the Virginia Museum of Transportation?
The next step, build a facility to cover the 611, the 1218, and the 2156. The money's there, it's in the account. We're continue to get donations every day. We're waiting on a closure deal with Amtrak to give us the piece of land back that NS gave them or was leasing to them, and they're just procrastinating in signing the paperwork so that we can get the facility built. That's what's happening with VMT. 611 is going to be going around the country or going to different places, which is like she did when she was running back in the 80s and 90s. She didn't stay in Roanoke. She was only here twice a year. She ran with Mr. Claytor, she ran with Mr. Collins, she ran with Mr. Saxon, and together the 611 and 1218 ran across the eastern United States on Norfolk Southern's track. People could see the engines that were built in Roanoke. And like Mr. Claytor said, they were Roanoke born, Roanoke built, Roanoke bred. And even Scott Lindsay says, we've rebuilt it. This is the third time that we've rebuilt the 611. It doesn't need to be sitting. It needs to be running somewhere on somebody's track. And if Amtrak decides to, and I got to be very careful how I say it, right now Amtrak has been a pink-haired donkey because they don't want to assume responsibility with excursions of steam engines and private rail cars. And they, in a sense, are losing publicity, they're losing money. But there are communities that lose money by not having the 611 come there. When 611 was running from 2015 to 2017, every community that the 611 ran in made money. Hotels sold out, convenience stores sold all their goods, places like Subway and your places you eat lunch and dinner, all of them had full the whole time 611 was in the area. 611 generates finances for communities, and it also generates a fan base. It's known around the world as the greatest coal-fired 484 in existence and the fastest coal-fired 484 in existence. There are other 484s, the 844 Alco Union Pacific only goes between 80 and 90 miles an hour. 611 can do 110 to 140 miles an hour. That's documented. You got the 261 Milwaukee Road, 75, 80 miles an hour. It's an Alco. It burns coal. But again, they don't have the horsepower that 611 has. 611 is 5,100 horsepower. It's the most powerful in the world. And what else can you say about it? It's the queen of the fleet. It's all that and a bag of Frito corn chips. It's the greatest steam engine. Yeah, you've got the Daylight 444, 49 on Southern Pacific, but that ran in California and it ran out in the West. It didn't run on the East Coast except during the bicentennial. It was painted red, white, and blue, and it ran across the country until it got to D.C., and then they replaced it with the 2102 Reading unit, the Reading steam engine that ran on the East Coast with the bicentennial train. 611 wasn't running then. In fact, 611 was sitting here in the museum. But now 611 is an operating steam locomotive. It needs to be on the track. It needs to be generating the fan base. People need to see it, and people that come here to the museum that see it, they are overwhelmed at how big it is, how big the wheels are. And when you stand on the sidelines and watch it go past you and you feel the rumble and you hear the thunder, it's all that. It's the epitome of what a powerful piece of equipment is supposed to be. And the key issue is that it was built in Roanoke, Virginia by the Norfolk and Western. It was not Schenectady built. It was not built in Erie. It was not built in Philadelphia. It was built in Roanoke at the East End Shops. May 29, 1950. It was one of 14 that was built. It's the only one left. So if you haven't seen it, go see it. Right now it's in Strasburg, Pennsylvania at the Strasburg Railroad. Go see it. It'll be at North Carolina Transportation Museum for the fall and the spring in North Carolina at Spencer. Go see it. You can ride behind it at Spencer. You can ride behind it in Strasburg. Go do it. Put that on your bucket list. Go see and ride behind J611. There are other steam engines, but none of them come up to the level of the J. She is the queen of the fleet.
And the last question is there anything new happening with 611?
Anything new?
Besides the Strasburg trips and Spencer?
Well, right now, those are the two key things going on. There possibly will be other things going on next year.
Like?
We're not at liberty to reveal it because we don't know. We've heard there are places that she could go. But once again, if the powers that be at Amtrak will un-ostrich themselves from the sand and look at the situation the way it is, they can get a lot of publicity from letting the 611, the 765, the 261, and even the 4449 run on their tracks and let people see and let children get a chance to appreciate a steam locomotive, whether it's basically coal-fired, but also oil-fired. The 844 is oil-fired. The Union Pacific 3985 is oil-fired. And I think the big boy is oil-fired.
And the 4449, I think, is also.
And all 4449 is oil-fired. The only two coal-fired are 765 Berkshire nickel plate and the J611.
And the Pierre Marquette.
The Pierre Marquette is coal-fired, but it's not running right now.
No, I think it only runs around Christmas time.
Yeah. And there are several others that can be brought back to operating status if there was a place for them to operate successfully. People need to see, people want to ride behind a coal-fired steam engine. Now, me, I ain't into getting cinders in my eyes and getting sun on my face. I'm content to sit in an air-conditioned car and ride behind it, or stand on the platform and ride behind it. Yeah. But people appreciate what the 611 is. And again, we emphasize, it is the greatest coal-fired 484 Northern steam engine in the world, built in Roanoke, Virginia, May 29, 1950, the only one of 14 still in existence.
Well, I think that concludes it. That wraps it up. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome, sir. Have a great day.
You too.